Hey everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Denise Brown. Our next presentation is about who am I? And you might wonder, how does this fit with our work theme? And sometimes our work is around our career and sometimes it's our work around ourselves. So Jeff is going to help us find the answers to the question, who am I? So take it away, Jeff.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I always start this off with thanks, Denise, for putting together this awesome, amazing event. It's been so helpful for me just in the presentations I've been able to watch, and I appreciate so much being able to be a part of it. Who am I? Who do I want to be? And how do I get there? I don't know, some big questions that I'm sure most of us have been asking us for ourselves for a long time. Slide is similar to yesterday's. I'm no expert on all this. A lot of it is drawn from my own experiences and just my story. But you know, my story is, for those of you who haven't heard it before, is I took care of my wife, Cherie, for 10 years, and I lost her about 17 months ago. And obviously through that caregiving experience and now through the grieving experience, it's been a struggle. It's been a lot to deal with, and I'm sure everybody can relate to that who's on this call. You know, one of the things I feel is that caregiving and loss are probably two of the biggest identity thieves out there. I felt that, you know, I kind of lost who Jeff was when I was taking care of Cherie for 10 years. And then obviously after Cherie passed away, I felt almost an even bigger loss. I had suddenly more time, but suddenly felt just more lost with how do I fill my days and how do I make myself good? And again, it's a crappy club that we're part of. Whether it's a loss, whether it's a divorce, whether it's just, again, still in the caregiving experience, it takes its toll, and it again, it's a huge loss of identity for everyone who's involved. Initially, after Cherie passed away, you know, I went to a grief counselor and, you know, said kind of the same thing, that, wow, you've taken care of her and now you're able to start again. I fortunately had met Denise and another wonderful lady who was my life coach instructor. So I had kind of started to get on with, okay, what's my next step? Who do I want to be? Again, I think part of that is still figure out who you are now and what you've lost. But again, I think the first thing to do is start acknowledging that you weren't who you were 5 years ago or 10 years ago when you started taking care of whomever it was. Again, in a loss situation, there's a big hole to fill there. I told the story yesterday that I think it was about 9 months after Cherie passed away. I came home for a surgery that my mom was having, and you know, she was living in a 2-story colonial, and she had just had a quadruple bypass. She was now going to go on dialysis, and she was sleeping in a recliner. She was sleeping down on the couch because she couldn't make it up to the bedrooms at night. And so we immediately jumped on finding her a ranch style house and putting her house on the market. And it was really kind of surreal that it felt so good to have somebody to take care of again. And, you know, I think after losing Cherie, after taking care of her for 10 years, I just felt like this huge hole in my life. And as much as we say how difficult it is as a caregiver and how much it robs us of time and energy and how tired we are, it also creates a big void when that becomes our everyday normal and it's not there anymore. You know, I think that, again, some of the feelings and thoughts that I had after and during were, especially after Cherie passed, is not wanting to go on anymore myself. Just every day seemed to be just this dredge, this just so difficult to just get myself up, get moving. And then again, I experienced a ton of grief fog where I knew what I needed to do with my to-do lists or, everything that was in front of me. But, making a call to the power company seemed like a monumental task for me to do. And it really shouldn't have been. So, I always said when I was a caregiver that I couldn't believe how hard it was. And I found myself feeling that after losing Cherie, that was even harder than the caregiving itself was. Again, I tried to fill the voids, again, that hole. And it was nice to, I'm very fortunate that I have a huge support system of family and friends who were nothing but supportive during the caregiving, after caregiving. But I'm also a person that has a hard time asking for help. I'm a person that has a hard time reaching out to people. And again, after losing Cherie, I felt this huge void, I felt useless, unworthy. And again, I would reach out then to some of my friends who were having struggles or difficulties, to figure out, can I help them? And will that give me that sense of purpose again? I think that's also when I decided that this is really what I need to do moving forward. And I would encourage all of you to find that. What is it that you used to love to do before caregiving? What is it that you used to love to do, before all this whole process started? And start trying to reclaim some of that back. I will say that, I also, I'm a different person than I was 20 years ago. Things that I thought were important to me when I was 30 years old, after Cherie's 10-year illness, they just don't seem so important to me anymore. So I think that there's probably parts of us that are happy with maybe who we used to be and would like to get some of that person back. But I think there's also parts of us that have learned and have grown and maybe don't want that back. So I think it's really important to...
Jeff, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure.
I'm wondering how the guilt got in the way of you feeling like there was a next for you. You talked earlier how you felt like it was so hard to figure out, how do you go on? And I'm wondering if that guilt affected your vision for yourself for the future, almost like a survivor's guilt.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, as I said, I started to even have those feelings when I was caring for Cherie. I hadn't met you yet, and I didn't realize how many resources there were out there and how many things I could do. And it wasn't until, again, reaching out and becoming part of your group that I realized I had more options and that there were some services out there, some things that could help me. So, yeah, I mean, even in the caregiving, I felt guilt that, like, wow, I should have known these things sooner. I should have researched these things sooner. It could have made my life better. It could have made Cherie's life as the caree easier. Again, I guess, the guilt after Cherie's loss, I didn't mention it on this call, but, Cherie fought for 10 years. She had an autoimmune disease, and she also had chronic Lyme disease. My research and everything that I've come to believe is that probably 80% of us have Lyme disease or have been infected by Lyme disease. But as long as we have strong immune systems, we may never, ever become symptomatic of the disease. But when someone has a compromised immune system, then that's where the Lyme spirochetes can really, I'm struggling to find the words, but really attack the whole body. I think that Cherie had a lot of brain fog, and I think that those spirochetes actually hibernated because of the fatty tissue that's in the brain. That's one of the places that they will gravitate towards. So, um, you know, again, for me, it was the guilt of, I wish I would have done this better, or I wish I would have known this. We put Cherie on a PICC line, and she was on antibiotics intravenously for 6 months. Again, knowing what I know now, I would never recommend that as a course of treatment, because I think though it did help kill off some of the Lyme disease that she had, I think it had such a drastic effect on the rest of her internal organs that she just never really truly recovered from that and after that. So yeah, I guess there's plenty of guilt, but I have tried to push it aside. And I think my presentation that I gave this year at the conference, it was a book that Shirley had actually given me, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. And it was that, we did the best job that we could with the experiences and the knowledge that we had at the time. And there was never a lack of love or a lack of caring. I was just capable of what I'm capable of. Again, that's not always easy to swallow, and hindsight 2020 and all that. But I think, again, for me, the other big part of getting me through this is I have two beautiful, amazing daughters, and I would never do anything, but there were days that I would wake up and be okay if I would get hit by a bus tomorrow, because the grief was just that strong. At the same time, I love those girls more than anything in this whole world, and they still need me, probably more so now than ever after losing their mom. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just think guilt is such a tremendous lure on us that it pulls us back. It keeps us in the past. And the release of the guilt is part of how we move into next.
Yes.
But I also think sometimes it's our inability to forgive ourselves that keeps us feeling guilty.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think that even Alex had, said once, Cherie got very much into affirmations. And, we had Post-it note affirmations throughout the house, over the kitchen cabinets, over the bathroom sinks. And, Alex, my oldest, said to me one time that sometimes the way we treat ourselves, consider yourself a 5-year-old kid. Would you say the things to that 5-year-old kid that you really say to yourself on a daily basis? Like, that's it. We beat ourselves up about our inabilities or lack of comprehension or lack of knowledge or whatever it is. But there again, I think that, one of the things on my slide is that we're not going to be completely the same person today that we're going to be tomorrow. And I think it's so important that, everything is a lesson. And sometimes those lessons are hard and they're overwhelming. And, I think back to, being raised Catholic when I was younger, and, God doesn't give us more than we can handle. And I think we've all been in a situation where we've said, wow, he's really pushing these limits. So, I don't know. I think that it's important, and that's, I guess, moving forward, is that what I've tried to teach my kids, my nieces, my nephews, is that everything is an experience, and, draw from that, learn from that. I talked about it a little bit earlier. I'm so much luckier than I think most people, is that I have a tremendous support system of family and friends who would literally give me their shirt off their backs. And I know that some people aren't fortunate enough to have that, and they're kind of doing this by themselves. But there are people out there, but we need to ask for help sometimes too, which I think um, we tend to have a hard time doing, because it's just, we're caregivers probably for a reason, and it's not in our nature to just not just take care of it and do it. I think at the conference, somebody did mention something though, and it was a quote that I had written down way back when, and it's, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And I mean, it's really important to remember this, I think, in caregiving and after the death or the loss of whatever kind. Um, I think the other thing that I wanted to stress is that I couldn't find myself until I acknowledged that I was lost. I think it's similar to somebody with a substance abuse problem, is that you have to acknowledge that you got some issues going on in your life, and somehow you gotta just take a step every day to do something to get better, to get stronger. And um, you know, I think we also need to be gentle with ourselves. Beth, I think in her last presentation talked about the to-do list and prioritizing that and what's important. And um, I found that, and again, I'm always really good at giving advice, but not necessarily taking my own advice. But I tell my kids, don't make this 40 item exhaustive to-do list that you're not possibly going to be able to accomplish tomorrow, because then you're just setting yourself up for failure. And at the end of the day, you feel even more like a failure because you didn't. So, again, if it's 40, well, then, like Beth said, what are the 10 things that are really important for me? And maybe today's a relationship day. Maybe today's a business day, whatever it is, but somehow finding the time to do that. Um, I'll just hit on that, and it's not on the slide, but I think sometimes we don't make enough time for those relationships in our lives. And at the end of the day, those are really the most important things that we will ever have during our time on this earth. And, the kids mentioned to me that, I've been much better about calling my mother-in-law more frequently, calling my mom to check in on her. And she's like, Dad, you're just, that's awesome. But I had to make a conscious choice to make those things a priority, because prior to that, that wasn't my priority. I was hustling, and I was trying to make money, and I was trying to pay bills, and and again, we all have to pay our bills, so I get that too. But it's kind of like people saying, well, I don't have any time to exercise. Well, that's crazy. We all have time. If it's important and it's a priority to us, we can find a half an hour to do some exercise. But again, I do say that and step it back, that especially after a loss, be good to yourself and don't expect too much, and don't beat yourself up. If you don't get on that treadmill today, then that's okay. Tomorrow's another day.
Could I ask you about energy, Jeff?
Sure.
I wonder if sometimes it's hard for us to do something like think about 30 minutes for exercise, because our energy is just so drained from the emotions of grief. And I wondered if that happened for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that probably one of the things that I've experienced most, as I said yesterday, um, I think in the first couple of months, I went to the grief counselor. I made the girls go to a grief counselor. I said, you don't have to continue to go, but you need to go to at least one appointment with this grief counselor, see if it's a fit for you, see if it's something you think would be helpful to you. So I thought I was doing great in those first 2-3 months. And then it was just like, bam, I was tired. I was exhausted. Um, I think it's also hard sometimes, back to your energy, And when I think of energy, I think of both just your energy level of how you're feeling today, but also positive energy out there in the universe, in the world. One of the things that we had started to do was, even when Cherie was sick and I was taking care of her, is, we had to purge some people that weren't good energy people for us, because that can be really exhausting as well. I have a relative that, it was almost like I had to like turn on some loud music and fire myself up to call that person, because I knew that shortly into the conversation, it was going to become, I actually refer to this person as Eeyore, because it was just like, oh, poor me, poor this. And so I think it's really important to surround yourself. Cherie and I questioned a couple of times whether we should have moved from Northern Virginia, where we raised our kids for 20 years. But the kids were down south further, Logan at East Carolina, Alex at Old Dominion there in Norfolk. And so we moved down there, and we met a lot of like people who were very much into positive energy and healing and alternative medicine. And so I think that's important. Energy wise, again, I think it's just sometimes, even when let's say you're just feeling a little under the weather and sick, I think that sometimes it's easy to just plop yourself down on the couch, turn on Netflix and say, well, I'm having a rough day today, so I'm going to start binge watching this. And I think that sometimes you need those days. And I think there's nothing wrong with taking those days. But I think other times it's if you just push yourself forward a little bit. I feel like a lot of times those Netflix binge watching days, at the end of the day, you actually feel worse than when you started, because you just never regain that energy that day. Whereas again, if you just, for me, it's simple things like go take a walk. I'm not a big workout, go to the gym guy. I love to play tennis. I love to golf. I love to play racquetball. I love to do exercising things, but I don't necessarily like to go work out. So again, for me, it was finding those things, going down and surfing down at the ocean front, or again, going for a walk if you don't have that ability. So yeah, I think it sucks the energy out of you, but somehow, again, be okay with the days that you truly can't find the energy, but at least try and find it in the morning and see if you can push yourself just a little bit. I think, the other thing that brings up to me is when I talked to my grief counselor, she mentioned something to me about, she had a client that she worked with that worked with her employer about kind of changing her work times and stuff, because she found that by like 3 o'clock every day, she was just exhausted and she was very unproductive. And so she adjusted her work schedule to get herself back, because she knew that by 3 o'clock every day, she was spent. So I think it's important, again, when you say, who are you? Who do you want to be? Is not just on the bigger scale, but like what's affecting you today? What's stopping you from accomplishing 4 or 5 things today and yesterday and the day before? And what are those little things that you can identify that maybe would change how you proceed with your days? The last couple of items on here is, I'm not a big journaler, but I found that when I do journal, it's really, really helpful to me. I do also find out that affirmations and that, again, positive energy, the last couple of slides is, I will seek out help now and for my future. I'm going to start taking my life back today. I'm going to start planning my future life today. I think it's really important. Again, even if we don't accomplish all 20 things, what am I doing today? What's that one thing that's going to help me figure out who I am and where I want to go and what I want to do? Hey, and Denise asked a couple of questions, but please, this is very interactive. If anybody else has any questions, please chime in. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the 5 stages of grief. I went over that a little bit in my presentation. Again, I started it today with, I initially rejected this, like I'm better than this, I'm stronger than this, these stages don't apply to me, I can just push through this. I've now figured out, yes, ma'am?
You know what? I'm curious about this. Which stage did you say, no way? Or was it all stages?
Well, like I said yesterday, I don't think it's a linear process. So I find myself hopping back between stages quite a bit. You know, I think obviously in those first couple of months when I thought, ooh, yeah, I'm different, I'm better, it was denial. Is that I felt like I can just push through this. And as much as I loved Cherie, you know, I still have a life to live. I got to get on with it. Then for me, I jumped to anger. I was upset that she left me and that she left the kids and that she quit fighting, even though I think the poor soul had literally no energy left. Then you get into the bargaining, and the bargaining is, again, you know, I wish I would have done this, or maybe if I would have done this, things would have been easier for Cherie. Then I did progress to depression. Yet it was no less than, it's been 17 months. I don't know if you can see my little mousey here, but just 3 weeks ago, I was back in that anger stage and I was so mad, and life is hard today and life is hard this week. And, you know, I'm having to deal with stuff with the girls that used to help me with this. I'm angry that I don't have both the frustrations and the successes to come home and to share with you every day. So, you know, for me, I think it's just, it's been a combination of going back and forth. I think that, you know, the other thing that I decided was that I really want to concentrate my efforts on grief, possibly even becoming a grief counselor. And so I'm planning to write a book on that because of what a struggle I've had for the last 17 months. So I've started to do a lot more research, you know, and I think even just some of the books that I've read have helped me to say, okay, you know, you're no different than anybody else. And these are all natural feelings. You know, I think one of the things I told you, Denise, but, you know, I'm moving back to Michigan to take care of my mom. So I'm closing on the house here tomorrow, and I probably won't move until the end. But lost my train of thought there.
Could I ask you a question about the denial? Because I
Yep.
think this insight about denial is very interesting. So not only were you in denial about death, so to speak, you were in denial about the impact on you, meaning your grief. You are not a grieving person, was your denial.
Right.
I'm okay. A
Right.
terrible thing happened, a terrible tragedy, and we're okay. We're functioning.
Yes. Yes. It was, you know, that mentality. And again, I don't know if it's a guy thing or just my family thing, but, you know, I was kind of taught that, you know, you skin your knee, you rub some dirt on it, and you keep moving forward. And so, you know, that was the way that I was going to try and handle this whole process. And yeah, not so much. I feel like the biggest thing with this is there's no timetable.
Right.
Somebody might go through this in 6 months and be at this fabulous number 5 acceptance. Some people, it may take 5 years. some people may never ever get to complete acceptance, and it's all okay. It's who you are. I said yesterday, I think also the level of um, the level of emotion, the level of love that you shared with whoever it is your loss was, that's also huge. I mean, I think that, let's take it out of death and let's take it to a divorce situation. I think some people who had an amazing, awesome marriage, divorce is much harder for them than if it was really not such a great marriage ever to begin with. Well, then maybe that loss, it doesn't take them as long to proceed through this process.
Could I also mention something else about the grieving? It seems like we've been talking about grieving the past, grieving the present, meaning your day is different because you're not going home and saying, guess what happened today? But you're also grieving the future. You had this expectation that your family of 4 would grow and expand, and you would share and celebrate as the family, expanded naturally because your daughters are older. So I'm wondering, which was the hardest to grieve for? Your past, your present, or your future?
Wow, that is a really excellent question. I think it's if I were to rate them, I would say the least was my past, because I was fortunate enough to have 36 wonderful years with Cherie, and I couldn't have asked for a better life in that time. Sure, there were tough times, but it was amazing, magical. I had something that some people will never probably experience in their whole life. So I'm okay with the past. The present is really difficult, so I would say that's number 2. But yeah, probably the roughest one is the future, because, one of the things Cherie and I talked about was buying a place that had, I don't know, 20 or 30 cabins, and we were going to make it this whole healing, holistic place for people to go to meditate, to do yoga, to learn how to eat better, to learn how to exercise, to just help people. And so, yeah, when it's not to say that that's gone forever, but even if I'm able to make that happen, it'll be a little bit less fulfilling because she's not part of it.
So Joan does wonder if you're still thinking about doing that, turning that into a reality.
I think so, but we obviously, with Lyme disease, most of it's not covered under insurance. So, unfortunately, over the 10 years, we probably spent close to $500,000 on Cherie's treatment out of pocket. And so I would definitely need some investors. If investors are coming my way, I don't know. My first step right now is coming here to help my mom and take care of her. But yes, to answer the question, I haven't set a timetable on when it's going to happen. But yes, I would like to look forward to that someday happening. I think at a minimum, I'm trying to do things, it's kind of like my daughter wants to start this awesome, fabulous restaurant where you can bring your dogs to and then have a rescue as part of it. And I said, well, maybe you start off with a food truck first and make some money, and then you can build to that. So I guess that's my plan, is I would like to grow this business, really finally get going with it, and, flip a couple more houses and have the money to just, I guess, in a slow progression, do that. But yes, ultimately, I would love to do that. My daughter is a nutritionist. My other daughter is just like one of the most beautiful, compassionate people in the world. So I have a couple built-in employees right off the bat. So yeah, I'm hopeful that at some point we can do something like that. at least a smaller scale. I think some of these, just in our conversation, you know, we've already talked about that not everybody's time frame is the same, that you will go back and forth between those stages. You know, I think it's really important, and I think that this is, again, something that if I could go back in time and redo, I would take some more time up front to reflect, to journal, to meditate. I wouldn't put so much pressure on myself that I got to keep moving. I got to keep going. And again, I think that is also a coping mechanism, you know, like for both of my daughters, they stayed really active and they picked up extra shifts at work, and they just tried to push it away by staying completely occupied and busy and not dealing with it. But it's back to what I said in the last slide, is that you can't cheat the process. You know, you at some point in time, you have to deal with your feelings, with the process, with how you're going to reinvent yourself, how you're going to put yourself back out there into the world. I mean, I think we can all agree as caregivers, there's a certain amount of isolation that we assume just because that's where our life takes us. And I think with grief, it's the same. As, you know, I pulled back even further then. And, you know, so again, I wish I would have taken the time to, again, read a book, do some things out there, join a support group, go to the grief counselor, talk to a pastor, whoever, but, you know, start working on that reflection and that plan, just baby steps immediately.
You know what? I just had an insight about it, Jeff. It sounds like what you're saying is give yourself the time to feel.
Yes.
And not be afraid of how intense the feelings are.
100%. You know, and again, for me, it was hard when we lost Cherie. Logan, my youngest, was very worried about me and how I was going to deal with it, how I was going to handle it. So she moved back in with me. And one of the things I really tried to avoid was crying and showing my emotions in front of her, because I felt like I'm the dad. She needs my help. I need to take care of her. I can't let her have to worry about me and my grief and my feelings. And that was really a disservice to me as well. As, you know, I think there are certain things that, you know, we'll always hide from our kids. You know, maybe only give them a portion of the story because, you know, it's a nasty enough story. It doesn't need to be so nasty. But at the same time, you know, Cherie and I had that conversation early on. It was 2 years before Cherie even told the girls what was going on. And I said, look, I'm seeing it deteriorate, that relationship between you and the girls, because they have no idea how you're feeling. They have no idea that you're not able to get out of bed. You're a little shorter with them. You don't have as many patients, all this. So I do think communication is very important. And yeah, it's okay for them to see their dad cry and see how much he misses his wife.
It's that it all mattered. It all mattered so much that this is the expression of how much you miss it, because it mattered that much.
Exactly. And I think that, you know, again, I think I'm a more in touch with my feelings man than maybe a lot of men are. But I feel like a lot of men, you know, they don't hug their friends. They don't want to see anybody see them cry. So I, you know, again, I go back to Amanda's. It's not an Olympics. It's not a competition. I think everybody's grief affects everybody differently. But I think that that's just an inherent thing that, you know, like I said, you know, we're taught as boys not to cry. You know, 5 Agreements talks about, you know, this is how society says you're supposed to be. And so, I mean, I think that that's hard. For me too, I lost my dad about 12 years ago. And I've lost some grandparents, but I never had grief at this level before. I do remember when my dad died, I took probably a month off of work. And yeah, I remember going back to work so angry, like, my dad just died a month ago. How can you people just get on with your lives and act like this didn't happen to me? So I remember that. But, I apologized to my stepmom even at one point, and I said, wow, because she was totally in love with him. And she I didn't get that at that point until I went through it myself. And I'm like, I tried to push you a little too hard and say, come on, you need to get over this. You need to get on with that. And again, it was at that point in time, based on what I knew and my own experiences, I thought I was helping her, and I wasn't. And I get that now. And so, yeah, I made an honest, sincere, I'm really sorry for doing that. I didn't know any better.
I just want to give you a heads up. You have about 9 minutes.
Okay. So I guess the positives to take with this is that, again, take that time to reflect. Think about the things that you used to like to do before all of this happened in your life, and see if those still fit in what you see as your new life. Think about those lessons that you've learned, and how they've shaped you to become the brother, the sister, the mother, whatever it is, the friend that you are. And again, think about what you want to do next. And it's really the perfect opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself to be whoever you want to be. And I think we can all agree that we know a lot more now at our age than we did when we were 20 and 30 years old. So again, I think it's just really reflecting and drawing back on those lessons and saying, what do I want to do next? Like, for me, service is very important. I need to help people. It's what I enjoy doing. It gives me peace. It gives me comfort. It makes me feel useful. And so, it's got to be some type of a component of that for me. But, if you like working with elderly people, if you like working with kids, if you like working with animals, I mean, jump out there, take a chance at it. Again, how do I get there? We've really kind of talked about all these too. I think the biggest one that I want to talk about is back to, it's baby steps, and it's one step at a time. And again, don't feel like you have to make this leap, Monday to Tuesday, that you accomplished all this stuff. The other suggestion I have is, especially after the initial loss of someone, is we need to be deliberate in the decisions that we make, but don't make any rash decisions, especially when it comes to financial decisions. I was lucky, we were still pretty okay, but, I think that, some people have shopping addictions, and some people just, again, to me, you're trying to fill this hole some way, somehow. And whether that's going to the liquor store and buying a bottle of booze, or going to the casino and gambling, or going on Amazon and, Amazon Prime and, your front porch over the top. I mean, it's just, again, be deliberate in your decisions, but be smart about it. And then, just get out of your own way. Be good to yourself. Move forward one step at a time. But you're not perfect. You're not going to make all the right decisions. You're still going to make some mistakes, just like you did before your loss. So be okay with those, and be a little more gentle with yourself. And you'll get there. Any other questions? I think that's all I have.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type your question in the chat room. I guess I'm wondering, Jeff, when you think about where you were, let's say a year ago versus where you are today, what would be the difference?
Well, today is a good day, Denise.
Oh,
So,
good. Okay.
and yesterday was a good day. I find that I still have that. Yesterday, and we ran out of time, so we didn't even really get to the triggers. But when I came home about a month ago to when I found the house here in Kalamazoo to buy, and I had a really great time. I got to see a bunch of friends and family that's here. Most of my family and Cherie's is still here in Michigan. We were the ones that ventured out, but it was amazing. I felt really good for a couple of weeks. And then I walked into my house and, immediately there on my front table, as I walk in my front door, is a picture of Cherie and the girls. And it's just like, bam, and it was going back to the house that, we last lived that together. So I still have some triggers and some things that can really bring me to some really dark, bad places. But again, I accept those and I give myself the day to say, okay, Jeff, you can be sad today and that's all right. But tomorrow we got to go back to taking those steps.
Wow. Yeah. It's this idea that the sadness is today, but I guess it's maybe thinking the intensity of the sadness doesn't have to be forever.
Right. It doesn't. And I'm confident and convinced that it won't be forever. I will miss Cherie and she will be a part of my life forever. But yeah, it'll be, I think, less sadness and more just happy memories. And, again, my gratitude, as I told you, I'm not grieving the past because I had a wonderful life. If something were to happen tomorrow, I'm one of the luckiest people to ever walk the face of this earth. I had her, I have 2 beautiful daughters. I have so many amazing friends, colleagues, all of you. I mean, I'm blessed beyond blessedness.
So I'm wondering, what is it that you need from your friends, I guess? So your friends are a blessing for you. What can they give you that's helpful?
I had a conversation with my brother when we were up in the Upper Peninsula, no cell phones, no internet service, anything. So I finally told him, again, it's really hard. I'm the oldest. I've always taken care of them. I've always taken care of my mom, my dad. I'm a caregiver. They say there's natural born salespeople. I think there's natural born caregivers. I mean, it's just me. It's that service, that caregiving. For me, it's like a text now and then that says, love you, thinking about you. Because sometimes I don't want to have a conversation.
Right.
When I'm sad, I especially don't want to have a conversation with somebody because I don't want to dump my stuff. Everybody's got their own stuff going on. So I have a hard time. I think for me, that's why I went to the grief counselor. I have friends that are there for me, give me the shirt off their back, but they have their own issues. And I don't want to become that friend like the family member that I call Eeyore, is that, every time I talk, it's, oh yeah, poor me, bummed out me. So I really don't ask them for a lot, but I have gotten better of just being honest. I'm having a shit day. I don't want to talk. I'll catch up with you next week.
Yeah, and there's something powerful about a friend that says, okay,
yep,
I'm thinking of you. So you don't have to explain why it is that you're having a difficult day. You don't have to defend the fact that you're having a difficult day. There's the acceptance that This is part of this process, which includes difficult days. And on a difficult day, it's just not possible for you to talk.
Right, right. I think the best thing you can do with everybody is tell them how much you love them every day, every single day. Just thinking about you, I love you. That is amazing.
Okay, that's so beautiful and so simple, and I don't do it enough. So now I'm going to do it more. So thank you for that. Wow. Okay. Other questions that anybody might have? We've had really a great conversation in the chat room as well, Jeff. And I want to mention that Leslie, who lost her husband recently, wrote in the chat room to you, Jeff, I hope I am where you are in 17 months.
You will be, Leslie. And be okay with yourself if you have some stumbles, as Denise calls them.
Yes, we all
Because you will have stumbles, and stumbles are okay.
Yeah.
It's just, you got to keep picking yourself up and be open to people too. Let them help. I don't know. I think that's, I didn't think about it till just now, but again, Denise, you asked the question, how am I different? I do tell people I love them more often, and I let them know how important they are to me in my life. And, with COVID, I'm a big hugger, so that's really kind of sucked. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, Leslie, I'm really sorry for your loss.
Okay, we're going to close for today, except we're going to be back tonight.
Perfect.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeff.
You know what? I'm going to post it because Deb asked me for it from a resource. But if you'll give me 2 seconds, I'll go get 2 books that I would highly suggest Leslie take a look at.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll keep the chat room open. I'm going to stop the recording and thank everybody who's joined us for the archive. And then we'll convene again for the rest of our work sessions. Okay, thanks everybody.